Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome.
We are back this week.
My name is Sean.
My name is Caesar. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Sean.
My name is Caesar.
I go by he, him. I wear a maroon shirt.
And my shirt is grayish blue, and you can't tell that it's dirty. Welcome to Aletheia Radio this week. We are going to... Oh, I'm doing it again.
You're doing it again, bro.
I just do that all the time. Sorry about that. I'm trying to monitor you people online, you people. Dina, hello, Dina. How are you doing?
What's up, people?
Such a pleasure to have you with us. So today we are talking
on Off the Books, Aletheia Radio, we are talking about man up.
Yes, manning up. What does it mean to man up? What does it mean to, what does everybody think it means to be a man? Most importantly, what does the Bible tell us a man is, and where do we feel like we're messing up in between?
Yeah.
But if we're going to be talking about a man, we got to really look at the proper context of man. This is a beautiful song I'm going to share with you guys right now. It's about being a man. It's also from a great movie about a wrestler, a godly man who was a wrestler. And he was a real religious man. Although Christians, we're not too religious, I would say, right? It's not more, you hear this a lot. We say like, we're more about, it's about a relationship, not about religion. So that, all right, that's really fun though. I'm going to go back to that.
You should go back to that.
I'm going to dance on that later when we go off the air.
Yeah. So what do we got going on in some current events? We got some things going on,
in current events, monkeypox has hit. Hope you guys are having a good time with that one, which is really interesting because they're about to declare it. They're about to declare it like a state of emergency for monkeypox. Now, if you haven't been keeping up with what's going on with monkeypox, what's actually happening is it's affecting less than 1% of the world. I kid you not, less than 1% of the world. And and listen, I don't wish anyone to get monkeypox. So where does the CDC say monkeypox is coming from? Well, not coming from. Where is it? What communities is it being spread the most? And I think the language is interesting in the CDC's report on this one, because it said that monkeypox is being spread the most in gay and bisexual men. And now, this one's interesting. It says transgender women or non-binary persons assigned male at birth who have sex with men. So men. Or gay men. So you kind of conquered that in the first line. So that's what we're talking about there. Then this is really interesting. Sex workers of any sexual orientation or gender, staff of bathhouses, saunas, and sex clubs. All right. There is a tremendous amount to unpack in that section right there. So what does that mean? All right. So number one, if we're talking about sex workers, it's like, okay, so you want to warn them to watch out. I get it. But this is part of the problem. Like, sex working is one of the oldest practices in the history of mankind. You hear about it in the Bible. You hear about it everywhere throughout history. But ironically enough, I mean, I don't think it's a practice that will go away, but I think minimizing it would help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so.
I like Sean's response to that. I said, I think minimizing would help. He said, yeah.
Yes.
You know what?
Yep,
you're right. I'm going to agree with you on that one. That's a good one.
Minimize sex working.
And it's like bathhouses. Then it's
but you're talking about, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the monkeypox. The pox.
But no, the sex working.
Okay, yeah.
What do you mean? Like prostitution?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's in the Bible also. Right?
Yes, and just another reason why you shouldn't engage in it. Right there. It's called monkeypox. So the symptoms of monkeypox are blistering sores, high fever, and irritation and aches. So it's like the flu with boils. Pretty nasty stuff. Yeah. So what else we got going on in the news?
Well, there's a lot going on. Well, we've got China.
China's trying to like muscle their way into
Taiwan a little bit, right?
That's a bit
and not only that, I think the president is supposed to have like a conversation with the.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah, so I mean that's happening. The midterms are coming up, so a lot of
midterm elections.
A lot of people are swaying one way or another right now.
Yes, do not be swayed. Israel, hello. Glad to have you on. Yeah. So people, listen. We talk about politics in the beginning of the show because we can't talk about it during the course of the show too much because it really would just take away from the gospel, and it's kind of not worth it.
Yeah, but it's important.
But it is important because these things affect you right now.
So the way you get out and vote and the way the people that you put in power is important. So that we have the morals and values that we stand for can be in office.
Oh wow! Check this out. So he spoke with
he did.
He, being the pronoun for President Biden, spoke with. I'm sorry, that's terrible.
What?
We're raw today. I apologize. Biden speaks with China's Xi for over 2 hours amidst tension with Taiwan. How do you think that conversation went?
My name is.
Hi. My name.
I wish I had.
He's like. Gee, I'm glad we're
changing people's lives.
That's what he said. That was it. And he's like, I want to talk to you about what's going on. I'm sorry. I'm picking on him. It's terrible. Yeah, so they spoke for a couple of hours. It was part of the administration's effort to maintain and deepen the lines of communication between the U.S. and People's Republic of China and to responsibly manage our differences and work together where our interests align. Where do our interests align? So honestly, the only thing that aligns with China and America is trade. That's the only interest that we have.
Yeah, and actually, I think what we should have learned from even the pandemic and everything is that we need to rely more on ourselves, where we get a lot of our medications and pills and things like that from China, where we should really try to start even. The administration now is saying how that the war in Ukraine and Putin has affected inflation and gas prices. Well, that we could have fixed that by not relying so much on outsourcing our energy resources and things like that.
But now you're battling with the people for green energy, and it's funny because like we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago on the show about lies, what you believe and what you deem as truth based on your opinion, and it's really crazy stuff because if you break it down to things in its simplicity, that's what we were talking about Occam's razor before. Everything in its simplicity, usually the answer lies there. When you're talking about people in power, people that crave power. They're going to tell you whatever you want to hear, and they really don't care about the details of what you care about. They want your vote for their own personal interest.
Well, think about China. I mean, when we were talking about China, it's not all of China because there's a lot of Chinese, and if you look at the persecuted church, I mean, one of the biggest persecuted churches is in China.
They're killing their own people. It's terrible.
It's terrible, and we should pray for those that are believers in China. But you could see, like the Communist Party, even how they have. There was some stats today, like on Fox. I don't remember exactly, but how much land they have bought. In
the United States. What is it, 260,000 acres?
Yeah, it's billions of dollars of real
land.
estate, and it's owned by the Communist Party, so...
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, so even Florida, I think DeSantis was trying to put some measures in place where they have to pay 19% or 20%, as a foreign national buying property, which to me, I think, you should be... If there should be some stipulation in there of being a U.S. citizen buying property, especially large amounts of property.
Yeah, and then you should be really curious as to what that property is being
used for.
And listen, I don't have anything against people buying property overseas. I really don't. But when you're talking about people that don't share the same values as you, and by values I mean things of real value, things that really matter. Because a lot of times we use that terminology as well, we don't have the same values. Well, you could say it that way, or you could say we have values versus your lack thereof.
Right.
And I think that's a really important state of mind to get into when you're addressing what other people are talking about when they mean their values in their life. Like as Christians, there's certain things that we value, and money and things of the world are not on the top of the list. The things that we value first and foremost is God, then we value our family, then our community, and so on and so forth. Like these things are set biblically for a reason, and they're really important for that reason because it works.
Right.
Yep.
So
sometimes you just got to man up.
Man up.
Man up. So that's what we're talking about today. So we're going to talk about we're going to talk about men and young men. Sean and I were talking about Jordan Peterson's video that he put out, a letter to the church,
the Christian church,
Christian church, and it was funny because in the beginning of it, he says like, you're probably wondering like, who am I to write this? He's like, but I felt it was important because the church really needs to get a hold of this situation. He says that churches should have a sign out front that say,
young
men welcome.
Yeah.
And I agree with that 100%. I definitely agree with him 100% on that. Not because not because young men have nowhere else to go. It's because they have too many places to go. And I remember being a young man in my day.
Yeah. Long time ago.
But I remember being a young man and just taking bits and pieces of everything that was around me and kind of forming it into my identity. And young men today are struggling with things. And listen, I'm not saying young women are not struggling with things, because that is. But today we're talking about the young men because this is a topic that directly affects us, that we hold near
and
to our hearts.
Affects everybody else as well.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to talk about. So.
I mean, one of the greatest, I think, statistics is the family being broken up in America, right? Not having a father figure inside of the family nucleus.
You're talking. I think it was an average of like 71% of the households in America don't have an active father in it. Now, I grew up with my dad. My dad was there. My dad was always there, and it was still hard. Because sometimes being there, we don't practice certain things that need to become habitual in our lives enough to start training our kids up to have good habits. I'm talking about having deep conversations about what moves us, what drives us, and what dangers there are out there in pursuit of these things, and what is the proper definition of something that should move you and drive you.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So I was looking up some interesting some stuff right here, and we're going to get into some biblical quotes to support this first. But I was looking at some of the CDC stuff. I think they're pretty nuts, but their tests on certain things are really in detail, and that's what I do like about them. So right now, if you look at the truth about things, it's as far as suicide in the world, not just America, in the world, men are the highest bracket of individuals committing suicide.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they list a couple of things right here. Like, for example, it says, among middle-aged men, suicide rates were highest for non-Hispanic, Indian, or Alaska Native. That just means like white guys. Suicides per 100,000, followed closely by non-Hispanic white men. So I guess that means that's all white men, but just I don't know. I don't even know what that means. So I don't even know what that has to do. But here's the thing, though. Ethnicity does have something to do with suicide rates. What it boils down to is the highest suicide rate is white men, actually, and then the lowest is Black, Hispanic, and Asian in that order.
Right.
Yeah. So and it's leading by gunshot, and then the second highest cause is by hanging. So what would make a young man? Which most of the suicides, I believe, are in middle-aged men, and then second is in younger men. So what is making men feel that their life has no value? I'll tell you. And this just goes from multiple studies, things that I've been looking for. It's what's expected of us as men and how twisted it's gotten from its original point. So when you're talking about the purpose of a man, some of the studies in the CDC show that what really drives men to suicide is two things. So I was looking up at divorced men stats too as well. So now divorce actually causes men to suffer from multiple things. The two main things that they talk about is loss of identity. Many men build their identities around two things: their jobs and their families. So this is a problem, and this is why the church is so important. And this is why the church should take a big hand in it.
And that's why it's important to have young men in the church.
Exactly. Men's groups mean anybody from a young man who's 18 to men in their 70s and 80s. It doesn't matter. Men's groups are important because of these things. We find our identity in the things we do, not in our original state. And that's a problem. By original state, I mean created in the image of God. When I look at myself right now, I say I can do these things because I'm an image bearer of the creator of the universe. I don't look at things and say, I can do this because I'm a painter. I can do this because I'm a mechanic. I don't do this because I'm a carpenter. I look at these things because from God's perspective of me, because if I look at it from my perspective of me, I'm going to shoot myself down. We don't treat ourselves with the same respect.
And you realize where that gift came from, whatever gift that you do have.
Absolutely. And that's why it's really important to have God in your life, I believe. And if you look at the collapse of faith in our society, that has an extremely high element in why things are going south, because faith is decreasing. People are turning away from God. And so when you wonder why men are suffering in this country, it has not a lot to do with, but the main cause of it is not the attack on men, but is the attack on God first. Because the definition of a man's role is really important in the household. And when I say that, I'm not saying that a man's role in the household is to strong arm everybody into his will. A man's role in the household is to gently but unapologetically reveal what God's will is for the entire family.
That, and many times in the Bible, even I think it was in Samuel where it says, I think was it Samuel 9, it says 1 Samuel 9:4-9, take courage and be men.
Yeah.
And Paul says that, I think it is in Corinthians, where he says, let me just go to it real quick. He says, I think it was 1 Corinthians 16. I think it's 13.
14.
Yeah. So, and he says, be on alert, stand firm in faith, act like men. So what does it mean to act like a man? One of the main things is to protect your family.
Well, yeah, first and foremost
is protection.
Family and the innocent. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so you're the guy in the front. You're the guy in the front that's going to block everything that the world brings, the enemy brings, even some things of yourself, to protect your family.
Absolutely. So if you look at it like this, so when we hear the definition of be strong, stand firm in the faith. See, and this is the one thing about the Bible. The Bible is written in a very important narrative. Be watchful, number one. Mm-hmm. Stand firm in the faith. Number 3, act like men. Number 4, be strong.
It's actually in order.
Yeah. So you see how the fourth thing is be strong, because in the face of all these things, it's very easy to be fearful. So number 1, be watchful. That means be observant. Don't be falling into drunkenness where you can't really take control of a situation in case there's a threat in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, whether it's drunkenness or it's where your focus is.
Yes.
Your focus should be knowing your surrounding.
Yes, and I don't mean drunkenness by don't.
No, when you learn tactics on self-defense or protection or security, things like that, your first thing is you always have to be alert.
Be aware. Be aware. Of your
That's why even when you're a cop, you're always on duty. You shouldn't be under the influence because you tend to be carrying your firearm. You're always on duty, so you need to be alert. You need to be watchful.
It's not telling you be in the back of the church
Yeah, but be alert. And then the second one is stand firm in your faith, because in order to act like men, you have to be able to stand firm in your faith.
After you're watchful and you notice something that's happening, we have a tendency to get emotional, to be fearful, and react like that, and it's dangerous. So the second part is stand firm in the faith. So the faith tells me to not be emotional and to be logical about what's happening and think about what protection actually means in that moment.
Yeah.
And then it says act like men. This is a concept right now that is being shredded to pieces, because when you have statements like saying act like men, this is where people go around saying the Bible is misogynistic.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good question to go around and pose, and say, hey, what in your perspective means to act like a man.
Yeah,
what would it be?
Yeah, because most people automatically assume that it means being aggressive, prideful, hairy. I don't know. But like people like I don't have chest hair, so I'm kind of in lack in that area.
I'm full with that, so I'm good.
Well, Sean's more of a man than I am, you see? So if we held those things by
Put
that
hair on your chest.
Put some hair on your chest. We hear that growing up, right? So like when it says act like men, you can't just take that statement from the Bible and say it's misogynistic. You have to see, study, and read actually what the Bible says. What is a man?
Yeah.
That's the most important
And there's
part.
roles. There's roles for men, women, children, elders.
And all of these roles complement
Grandparents.
each other. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then so after it says act like men, what it means is the biblical definition of men, God's intention of men. Then it says be strong, because you can only be strong if you know what you are in that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing. Then it says, let all that you do be done in love. So now let me ask you, what is misogynistic about doing what you do in love? Letting all that you be done in love. That means being considerate, but not soft. It means being committed and firm. And it means being understanding and gracious at the same time.
Well, and people think of love as some kind of submissive thing too, but love actually, and especially in love, when you speak the truth and you stand firm in what you believe in, love sometimes hurts, because you know what? Same thing with truth. When people say truth hurts, it's the same principle. I love you so much, I'm going to tell you exactly. I'm not going to kind of sway it in a way that I might want to not hurt your feelings. I'm going to tell you because I love you.
Yeah, and we often assume the pain that comes from love is like an unnecessary byproduct because it offends us. And that's not true. It's necessary to be hurt in order to have growth and to truly understand love. You cannot understand love without the pain that comes with it. It's the double-edged sword that is truth, especially when it comes to love and what it means when the Bible tells us to walk in love, to act in love, to be love, because God is love. And a lot of people have a hard time with that because they have this very Old Testament fire and brimstone view of God without understanding the revelation of Jesus.
Yeah.
And that makes it difficult. So, like even in the Old Testament, though, this is interesting. Psalm 1:1-6. Blessed is the man, or should I say blessed? Is that more Christian if I say blessed?
It's blessed.
I don't know. I feel like
it depends on what version you're reading.
I feel like I'm a lot more Christian if I say blessed. But anyway.
Blessed is the man.
Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. All right, so as Christians, we know that Christ came to abolish the law. What does that mean? You can't do anything to get your way into the heaven or into the good graces of the Lord. It's already been done for you. Now you have to accept the gift, and through that revelation, change. So it's awesome because it says you're blessed if you do not walk in the counsel of the wicked. Like if you're not influenced by wicked people that are doing things for their own agenda or want you to do things for your own agenda, nor do you stand in the way of sinners. Like you don't put people beneath you. You don't, you also can't stop. You gotta have to come to a realization that you can't stop people from making mistakes, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. Like don't hang out with people that everything you say that is biblical, they're like, listen, I'm not saying you can't hang out with people that aren't Christians. It's not what I'm saying. But if people take the time to sit there and scoff at everything you say, they're not trying to listen to you anyway. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, and then in this, there's kind of like a progression too. It says, blessed is the man who does not walk, or stand, or sit. It's a progression
So
thing.
Christians, we have to float.
Yeah. Well, what happens is because you start. It's a progression. Once you start walking in that way, you stand there, and all of a sudden you sit, and now you become part of your surroundings. It's easy to get caught in that.
Yeah, and because you get caught,
it's a warning.
Yeah, it's the beauty about if you're not a Christian, read the book of Proverbs and the book of Psalms. You can start there safely. Like that's a really good understanding.
And the law is not really talking about law here. The delight,
not like Levitical law.
No, he's talking about God's word. The delight is in the word of the Lord, and in his word he meditates day and night. The law back then was the commandments, the
things that that God gave us to make our lives better.
Yeah. And then he says he will be like a tree firmly planted by streams of water, which yields fruit in its season.
That's a type and shadow. We'll get into that in another episode. But
but if as he's describing how a man should walk, not in a counsel of the wicked, not standing in areas where you're going to be consumed by sin and be overcome by the world, not sit with people or eat with people or be a part of people that are going to
just mock
change
you.
or change the way you feel, because you'll be on the side starting mocking others also. You become that person.
Yeah, because bad company corrupts
He
good
said,
character.
he's like, just sit in the word of God, meditate on it day and night, and doing so will make you be like a tree, and then the fruit of that tree will start coming out of you. So even if you find yourself sitting or standing and being part of the world, that fruit is going to come out. And then just like Jesus did, I mean, Jesus sat with the prostitutes and
the
the
tax
drunkards
collectors and the fishermen and
the fruit of that just overflowed to them, and people's lives were changed.
Yeah, and see, that right there is the best model. I mean, as Christians, that's the first thing we do. We say like, oh, how can we model Jesus? So as the church, when we're looking for young men to really to humble themselves up enough to say like, I don't have it figured out, I need help. How we don't have to sit there and say, how do we make the church more appealing to young men? We have to be the model that young men want to follow because they see the evidence in our lives. That's why Titus 2:7 is important. Show yourself in all respects to be a model of good works, and in your teaching, show integrity and dignity. This is where we fail the youth right here. I personally think, because we and listen, I'm not saying there's no proper definition of a godly man. that there is a proper definition, excuse me, because we all make mistakes and we all fall short. But the importance of this is why young men don't follow godly men. It's why we can't make disciples of young men a lot. It's because most of the times as human beings, we have to come when we're extremely desperate. And young men don't feel that desperation, especially if you live at home or and you have a very comfortable life. You don't feel a need for God. We all chase after God when we're suffering. We veer away from him when things are going right. So if we show ourselves in all respects to be a model of good works, and in our teaching show integrity and dignity, and dignity. What is dignity? I meant dignity. I said dignity.
You added two words. I think it was
degradation and dignity.
No, I think it was integrity and
it was like
dignity. Integrity.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a new word.
Add integrity and no diggity. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. But so think about that. So integrity, to be integral, to walk what you preach, to preach what you practice.
Yeah. Desiring God had a good article I read, and it broke down a couple of things where a godly man, some things break down. So the first one was a man commits to following a greater authority. Like when Jesus said, follow me.
Yeah.
So, and then the second one says he commits to sacrifice all else in the shadow of discipleship.
Wow. See, that's awesome because, and now that is our calling, discipleship.
Right.
To make disciples is not to like convince anyone.
Right.
It's to make them want to be followers.
Right. The third one says he commits to determine joyful obedience.
Yeah. Wow. Which is not very joyful to most of us.
Right. And I think a part of all of this is just being a follower of Christ, right?
Yeah.
Because number 4 says he commits to spiritual discipline.
Yeah. Wow. Now, you want to hear something interesting about all of this too? These are all characteristics of a godly man or a godly young man. It doesn't matter which one. So back in the day when rabbis would choose a future rabbi, because you had to be chosen, you couldn't work your way. There wasn't like the college of rabbis where you could just become a rabbi. You
Right.
had to be chosen by a rabbi to become a rabbi. So they would come to you once they decided that you were worthy of becoming a rabbi, and they would say to you, "Follow me." And that was the proper language for a rabbi to recruit a future rabbi in that moment. So what they felt was so blasphemous is that
What does
Jesus-
rabbi mean?
teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you say the teacher says, "Follow me," to recruit a future teacher.
Teacher.
Yeah, discipleship, same thing.
Teacher.
Yeah, that's what we're called to do.
Absolutely.
We learn something. We're not meant to hold it in. We're meant to teach.
Yeah.
And pass it on.
Exactly. And that's what was so blasphemous about Jesus telling tax collectors, adulteresses, and fishermen to say, "Follow me." They were like, these guys aren't rabbi material. Like, who are you to make these men teachers? The point that Jesus made at the dinner that night was that it is not the sick. It's the sick who need a doctor.
Yeah, and even when the Pharisees and Sadducees said, "Who gives you this authority to say that you can do this?" Who are you?
Yeah.
And he was like, "My authority doesn't come from this world."
Yeah. And that was blasphemous extremely because he's
Right.
talking about actually getting the direct authority from
God,
which
yeah.
they
And
weren't.
who are
too
you,
happy.
Moses?
Yeah, like who are you, Moses?
Moses? He's like, before Moses, I am.
I am. All right. So for all the people that make the argument that Jesus doesn't claim he's God,
that was like,
bam, it's right there.
Yeah, I am He.
Along with the Book of John.
Well,
along
that's
with-
the other thing is because even in like the Muslim world, they don't believe that Jesus ever claimed that he was God.
Yeah.
Where even at the woman at the well, when she said, "Well, we're waiting for this Messiah,"
And he says, "I am he."
I am that one. I am the man. I am the Messiah. Basically,
And listen, I get it. That's not what you practice, but that doesn't take away from what the Bible actually says.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of instances like that where people differ on the deity of Jesus, which was really interesting. Down to the first down to John being changed through the Jehovah's Witnesses as well. It says
In the beginning, yeah.
there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. They added an A into it when there was no A.
Was a God.
Yeah.
A God.
And there was no Greek translation for the word a. There wasn't a, the, they. There wasn't any of those things.
Yeah.
Greek was.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a question of whether Jesus was God and his deity, the best book to go to would be John.
Yeah.
Because John's gospel concentrates on the deity of Christ.
That's the book to go to, absolutely. And so if we're talking about Jesus being the man,
that's why that's why we're talking about it, because we're supposed to be followers. So he gives us what true masculinity is supposed to be.
Absolutely. And now Proverbs 27:17, you hear this a lot, especially if you go to church. You're going to hear iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what happens if you back away from people that are going to bring to light the troubles that you're applying to yourself? Then iron won't sharpen iron. Then the iron's going to get very dull. And this is what's happening with a lot of young men. What's happening with a lot of middle-aged men right now too is you have a lot of divorce going on, which is terrible enough. And so you tend to go re-find your identity. Like the article said before, we find our identity in our work and in our families. So when your family is broken and all you have is your job, it doesn't seem like your job is enough anymore. Your job is only enough with purpose to serve your family. That's all that matters. Like, for example, my wife went away to see her daughter and to see the baby. And while she was gone, I didn't even want to cook. And I love cooking.
Yeah.
She's like, "How's it going?" I'm like, "It's terrible. I got nobody to cook for. Like, it's awful. I want you to come home so I can cook for you."
Right.
And that's just reflective of excuse me. Sean gave me some chicken and rice. It was fire. It was so
I didn't
good.
give you nothing.
Yeah.
My wife
Well, your wife
made
made it. Yeah. So
Chicken and rice and chorizo.
Oh, so good. So it's reflective of your inner drive to serve. I mean, like as a follower of Jesus, like that's our calling right there, to serve our communities, to serve our families, to serve anyone in need. And when we lose that ability to serve, it takes away from our identity, because it's very easy to sway from the identity that God gave us when we feel that what God's has given us has been taken
First
away.
of all, I'd like to say one of the main things God did in the beginning, especially for men, was He put us to work.
Yeah.
Like you as
Get
a
a
man,
job.
get a job or put in some work, because nowadays, even like in my business, it's hard to find good people. Get up and get to work. I mean, that's the one thing that we were put in the beginning in Genesis, 2:15. He put them in charge of Eden,
From
of the
the
garden,
sweat
from
of your brow, buddy.
And
that's the thing, because so now, why do young men feel lost? Well, they're not being pushed to have responsibility. So a young man, any man in general, adopting responsibility, number one, is key. Organization of your immediate surroundings really, really helps, because when you know where everything is, you spend less time looking for things and more time. You have to optimize the amount of time that you have to achieve the goal that you want. Are we perfect at it? No. But the goal is, in order to feel complete, to feel like you're moving in purpose as much as possible, is to do that as much as you can. And that takes discipline. That takes good habit training. So what has to happen with the habits is you have to have a sense of accountability around you constantly to check your habits.
Yeah.
You need that.
The accountability, because accountability is part of that list of being a man. I think
Absolutely.
It's being courageous. Joshua 1:9. It's being strong. Mm-hmm. You're called to love.
Yeah.
You're called to be a husband. You're called to be a leader of your family and your wife. You're called to serve your family and others sacrificially.
Yeah.
You're called to be a father.
Yeah.
Not just to your own children, but to
Not
other
just a
children.
father.
You're called to be compassionate, to provide, to be honorable.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then you're accountable. You should be accountable to all those things.
Absolutely. Now check out what Israel said here. Israel Bayona said this. He's my cousin. I love this guy. He says, economics have a huge impact on the traditional nuclear Western family. The decline of faith in God in education is humongous. That's a big
Well, yeah,
one too,
that started long ago when they took the Bible, prayer, and things out of. I actually was speaking to a kid when I was away last week in Ocean City, and I was talking to a young man that became friends with my son while I was there.
Yeah.
And he happened to say, he was like, he was a football player, and I'm like, okay, what position you play? We're talking. And he was like, yeah, well, I just have to get my grades up. I'm kind of failing in theology class.
Ow.
Yeah, but I was like, theology? What school do you go to? Do you go to
Catholic school or something?
Catholic school, and I was like, because I'm like, these are the type
Out of all the classes in Catholic school, you're failing in
well,
theology.
and then his response was like, that's not needed anymore, because it's not necessary. So even going to Catholic school, he sees that it's not necessary to know who God is. And
I would have told him we're all failing in theology.
Yeah. And I said that's the most important class that you should be passing, because once you start striving, doing well in that class, I said all your other classes will start falling into place.
Yeah. That's the truth about that.
Yeah.
But that brings up an interesting point, because so now we study theology because it gives us a good understanding of what Scripture means. It gives us a good understanding of what God is trying to do.
We are every Christian is a theologian.
Absolutely. But I think the problem that we make with the young men is that we allow our theology to interfere with us being Christ-like sometimes. I think our theology becomes so important that we don't really get to the root of Christ's character when it comes to
because we forget what theology is. Theology is understanding who God is, and God was Jesus, just like we just spoke about.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if God's Jesus, then we need to know who He is.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a really big part of this that's missing, because what winds up happening is that our theology is super important to our walk, but it becomes the forefront of our walk instead of our attitude towards others. And that was the greatest commandment that Jesus gave us,
Right.
was that love God first and then love each other.
Yeah, it was,
so the theology should support that, but it shouldn't be the forefront of it.
Yeah, to love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength.
That was the.
I mean,
what it
that's
says,
that's
the most important.
That's the most
verse.
important. Why? Why is that? That's why I was explaining to this
Yeah.
young man, was like the most important part of that is because once you start doing that, then it says to be more Christ-like. We're supposed to be becoming, to look like the Son of God, to look like Jesus, right? When we start learning who he is and we start loving him with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, we start understanding what his will is. And then when things come across, like we have certain things that come across in our lives that we have to make decisions on, we base those decisions on God's principles, and those decisions become right decisions, and it changes the course of your life. I'm an
Yes.
example of that. You're an example of that.
We should all try to be that example.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, just even the basics. We all fail. We always miss the mark, But when we start striving for that, you notice the change in your life.
That's the point of the gospel.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
See, a lot of people think oh, I don't. A lot of young people especially say, like, I don't go to the church because, they were just as messed up as I am. And nobody in church tells them that that's the point. Just because you've got a messed up mindset doesn't mean it can't be fixed. And it doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes in the future as well. It just means that you learn about grace, you learn what's been given to you, and you learn to appreciate these things. So now the church doesn't have to be flawless. It's impossible for the church to be flawless. What the church has to be is transparent. That's what people want. People want somebody who's real, somebody who's relatable, and somebody who is not above them, but at their eye level for that reason. Nobody's going to talk to someone about a drug problem if they haven't had one themselves. No one's going to ever talk to someone who is trying to deal with having an unfaithful marriage if the person has never dealt with it themselves, because they're unrelatable. That's why God equips everybody differently to handle these specific situations. And what we try to do is we try to become the master of everyone's problem, and that just doesn't work.
Yeah, and as far as relating it to men, it's leadership, and as what the Bible calls a masculine man, or a man is a leader of community, household, and the church. So taking leadership is taking, like you said, the accountability of everyone that's under me or behind me, like my family, taking the accountability of I'm responsible for them.
Yeah, if it goes down, if there's a problem, that's on you.
And if there is a problem, that's because it's a decision that I made that I didn't either intervene or say something or do something.
Or go to God to counsel for.
Yeah.
Which is the most important thing. So 1 Peter 5, chapter 5, 5 through 10, this is really awesome. It says, likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders. Clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility towards one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So that whole message right there is really simple, but we lose it all the time, because you who are younger, be subject to the elders. Why is it important? Because the elders are supposed to have wisdom. What's happening right now is you have older men who are acting like children, and the children think that that's the way to act. When it says clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility, like, the younger men are supposed to be getting that example from us.
Yeah, I mean, this whole chapter is about serving God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
willingly.
Humble yourselves, therefore, under the almighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you. Because he's not going to give you something you're not ready for, and don't cry about it if you didn't get it, if you're not humbling yourself before that. Casting all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you. That's a huge one. casting all your anxieties on. Like, your worries are not your worries. You choose to make them your worries instead of giving them to him. That's our fault. Be sober-minded. Be watchful. Why be sober-minded? You're talking to a guy who had a drug problem. I could tell you a million reasons why to be sober-minded.
Yeah, because he says the devil prowls around you like a roaring lion, seeking to devour you.
Yeah.
Because once you, and again, sober-minded and the alert is similar. Being ready and being watchful is not necessarily is having a mind where even like when Paul talks about be transformed by the renewal of your mind.
Yes.
When you have a renewed mind and you're ready, when things come, and they will, because things are not going to not happen. You're either going towards a storm, through a storm, or coming out of one.
But there's always a storm.
There's always a storm.
Yeah.
So when he says be sober of spirit or be ready, be alert, when your mind is ready, look at the signs, because my dad told me once, God is always preparing you for something. Whatever your adversary is in the future, God is always preparing you for something. So be watchful of what he's doing in your life to prepare you for the next thing that is going to be hard or difficult.
And that's the truth, because that's what this whole passage is about. So it says, your adversary, the devil, prowls around you like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. So think about that. If he's prowling around you, that means you're in the midst of something. You're in the midst of purpose, of God's purpose for you. He can't come into that purpose. He has to remain on the perimeter because he can't penetrate that. So when he says he's looking for someone to devour, he's waiting for someone to stray out of what God is trying to do in your life. And it's real simple. And it's funny because like a roaring lion, you know he's there.
Right.
You hear him. He's a lion. He's not the smallest animal in the world. Let's be honest. So that example should tell you straight up why we have the problems that we have. The problems that we have are because of us, nobody else. I can't say that the problems I had in my life and the things that I'm dealing with now from those problems is anybody else's fault but my own, because how many good people around me did I have saying, oh, listen, I think that's a bad idea. You probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But did I listen? No.
Yeah. And just like when Paul was talking in Corinthians in verse 9, after he says, be sober and be alert, he says, resist him.
Yeah.
Be firm in your faith, knowing that the same experiences of suffering are being accomplished by your brethren who are in the world. So I have people around me that are going through those same things. Resist those things that are sinful and temptation and things like that. Be firm in your faith. Know that the same people around you have those same experiences.
Absolutely. We're all the same. And it's funny because it doesn't say, ignore him and he'll go away. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say pay him no mind and he'll go away.
No, actually,
it says resist.
Yeah, and actually the lion picture of him circling you, they're patient. They're going to wait. Mm-hmm. They're going to wait for the right moment. It's usually the lioness that's doing the hunting, and they're very patient. They're going to wait for a mistake. They're going to wait. They're going to follow the crowd until that one young one or someone starts straying off.
And it's usually the younger ones, yes.
And waiting for it to be left behind a little bit. And then that's when the calamity comes,
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's usually the younger ones.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part, because what you want to do is you want to equip the younger ones to deal with this. But fact is, their resistance is going to have to come from themselves. Young men are not gravitating towards gangs, are not gravitating towards all the wrong areas of life because the risk isn't there.
No.
They know the risk when they're going into these things. They want purpose so bad that they're willing to
and community.
Risk. And community.
We're community
Absolutely.
people. We want to be around family and community and be a part of something.
Yeah, we're relational image bearers. That's what our God is. And that's one of the things that we need to provide a better foundation for in our neighborhoods. And now this starts at the home too. This is not just the church's job. I mean, the church has to do the best we can for this, because this is you're talking about the core, the heart of our nation right now.
Well, the church can only do so much as far as if we as a community of believers are part of the church.
Well, that's the thing. If you go to church on Sunday and on Monday you're allowing this stuff to happen, well, then you have to question what you're
you should
doing.
be seeing those young ones being drifted behind and then come back around behind them.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like. I mean, I know. Trust me, I have grown kids. It's not the same. I'm talking about you're talking about young men, teenagers, stuff like that. I mean, like men of all age, but when you're really impressionable.
So when I say young man too, it's like I'm talking about anyone younger than me, which is So
I got friends that are older than me that are like, "Oh, you're young," and I'm like, "I guess I am." You know,
yeah.
And I should probably take that into consideration when I'm complaining about my body aches. You know.
But I think when as a church family too, and as a community, it's not like you said. It doesn't stop on Sunday. We should be aware and be involved in each other's lives continually. Even people at work, not just at church or at work, everywhere. At home, because you got to remember that lion that's circling around, and there's going to be times where people are going to feel down and things like that we need to be that person that preserves and protects and be the salt and the light to that person. Yes. or family.
Yeah, and it's important. So like the repetitive narrative in the Bible is like you always hear people say, God will say like, "Hey, where are you?" And like, "I'm right." Well, Adam didn't say that. Adam was just like, "No, Adam, here."
Yeah, right, he was hiding.
But like Ananias was like, "Lord, I'm here." Like,
yeah.
And it was good because we need to be available to these young men that are coming in. These young men that really do want to get away from these things but don't feel away.
We were talking about Samuel, right? And
Samuel, yes.
And how Samuel, when he was a little boy, heard God, and it took what's his name? It took Samuel's mentor.
Oh my goodness!
I just drew a blank. I gotta go to Samuel.
Yeah, go to Samuel.
Yeah, because it took him going. Listen to him.
Yes.
He kept coming to him. He said, "Okay, listen to what he's saying."
I'm gonna start blurring out now. Jeremiah, like Joshua.
Yeah, it started with an E.
E.
Yeah, that's all I know.
Oh, it's probably something like
Yeah.
Eric.
Eric.
Or
oh man, why can't I just draw a blank because I just thought of it. But anyway, Hannah was his mother.
Yes.
Eli.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so it's Eli. I had to go to 1 Samuel, but
I'm like
Eli because when you think of a bunch of different names, all of a sudden you blank out. But it took Hannah. That's also what we need to do as men, and as parents even. And it's hard to do because I just started recently doing it because my kids are growing up, and it's being able to give your kids over to God and saying, hey, you know what? I have no control of what their outcome is, but you do. So I'm giving them over to you, and that's what Hannah did with Samuel.
Yeah.
And then you have Eli, and then Samuel's hearing God, and he goes to Eli, and Eli was like, just listen to what he's saying.
That's what Moses' mom did.
Yeah.
She dropped him in the water in a basket.
Yeah.
And was like,
faith.
I don't know if I have that kind of faith, man. I'm not trying to put my baby in a basket.
And I talk about this all the time. Faith is not something that's blind where you just like, oh, I'm hoping.
You just know.
Her putting in the basket going, I have the confidence, the faith, the confidence that God's going to do something with this young man. Or
put him in the hands of the enemy and gave him favor.
Yeah.
On top of that.
Yeah.
And through all of that, led their people
and then
out.
Look at Samuel. Samuel became the prophet for David and Israel. Israel when it first
when it was
beginning.
first coming.
And then and of course they wanted a king,
an earthly king.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. That became the problem until Jesus.
Yeah.
And
that's what we do.
We're still searching for that right now.
We still search for
We
that.
want this earthly king instead of putting God first. And then when the earthly kings fail us, we're like, oh, well, that's so terrible. Like, it must have not been ordained by God. Everything is.
Right.
Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if it works in your favor or against your favor. It's all his hand moving. Get used to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. Right?
Yeah. So we're gonna get out because it's late.
Yeah. And happy birthday to Yvette.
Yes. Yesterday was my wife's birthday. That's why we switched from Wednesday to Thursday.
Happy birthday to
happy
Yvette.
birthday to my wife.
Yeah.
I couldn't do better.
Yep. She's a beautiful 30.
She is a beautiful 25. And that's all you guys
That's
gonna get. You ain't going to get anything else. That's
Yeah.
it.
And we weren't here last week, because we took a little time off, spent with the family.
Yeah.
But we're back at it, and we're going to come up with some new things.
And now we're on the grind.
Yeah, new things. Let's do it next week. What are we talking about?
I don't even know.
We talked about it, didn't we?
Did we?
I don't know.
I didn't write it down. So I got a bunch of other stuff
We start
written down.
forgetting easily.
What?
You know?
What?
What?
We don't have to remember. We're changing people's lives.
Pagans?
Oh, yes, paganism. That's probably
Paganism.
Yeah,
I think.
what are today's pagans like?
Yeah. My wife brought that up to me. She's like, "Why don't you guys talk about?" Because it seems like nowadays that we can easily look at what paganism is and how influenced we are by it.
Yeah, well, and listen, there is a religion that is not the religion of God right now, and everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Careful with that. So we're going to talk about that next week. We're going to talk about you heathens. I'm joking with it. So prepare to get your mind blown. Sean, can I have the sound? That's the way it's going down next week.
It's going to be a good show.
It's going to be a great.
We don't know what it is, but it'll be good.
But it's going to be good. We'll see you next week, only
right,
here
guys.
on Aletheia Radio. Enjoy your week. Praise God.
Praise God.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
And put your kids in a basket and send them down a river.
Amen. See you guys later.